Hi, and thanks very much for attending our session today from Beano Studios around how we digitally transformed the Beano business. I'm Pete Maginn, I'm Director of Insight and head up all the research that we do for external clients at the Beano Studios, and also work very closely with the internal insight team in terms of driving the business forward with all sorts of insights from kids and families to influence all our brands. So, as many of you will know, maybe from your own childhood, Beano is really a British icon. It has incredibly high level of awareness amongst parents, and over 3/4 of 6 to 12-year-olds know it too. So it's not just a historical; it's actually going stronger than ever before. What some of you may not be so familiar with is the fact that 4 years ago we launched the whole business as Beano Studios, and we underwent huge transformation. And today the business comprises of 3 main offerings. Of course, there's the creative studio, which includes the comic and our TV content. The flagship content is Dennis and Nasha Unleashed, which is on CBBC in the UK, Netflix, and it's in 100 markets globally. The second one is a digital hub for 7 to 14-year-olds, which is Beano.com. And then thirdly, our externally focused specialist services, including Insight, Beano Brain, which is where I sit in. Beano.com itself is the fastest growing kids site in the UK. There's over 3 million unique users each month and nearly 10 million page views and a core user age of 7 to 12-year-olds, and quite uniquely for kind of kids content, a very equal mix of split of gender in terms of girls and boys. So this now means that our audience engagement is radically different from when you may have been reading the Beano as a kid, and in fact even just from a few years ago. Rather than relying on a handful of readers writing into the comic itself, we can now speak to millions of kids. Ever since the concept of Beano's transformation was first floated, Insight has driven all the decisions, big strategic ones, small tactical ones, and it still does today. We have accumulated and harnessed an incredible amount of insight from over 40 months of our core panel and millions of responses on Beano.com itself via our surveys. And at the heart of Beano Brain are 2 brilliant proprietary tools, and they really kind of are at the center of everything we do. Firstly, there's our Omnibus, which means we can get really accurate of-the-moment insights directly from kids without parent bias from 7 to 14-year-olds in both the UK and the US. And then we have our TRENDSPOTTERS, which is our 50-strong qual panel of kids and teenagers in the UK. We developed our Omnibus based on the insight that A, kids love quizzes, and B, when they're in the frame of mind of doing a quiz, they're really responsive to answering a quick question or two. So as you can see here on the demonstration, they will be doing a quiz, like kind of what would you do in this situation. They then get asked a totally random question, they answer the question, they get asked their age and gender, both of which they are kind of absolutely fine not to answer if they don't want to. And importantly, they get shown their answer as well and everyone else's, which is a really key. Kids love to see what everyone else is kind of saying, what everyone else has put, and how their answer stacks up. And after that, they then get returned to the quiz. So really great environment for real-time insight capture. And what we've seen is that the insights from our Omnibus are really sharp and much more of the moment than other kids-focused data. We kind of compared it here to the kind of Ofcom data. So Ofcom do an annual kids media report. The last one they published was back in February this year, and it's really comprehensive. It gets they release it out into the kind of wider media, and it is a kind of authority in terms of kind of kids content insight and reporting. And they asked the question which they published in February: which social media or messaging sites or apps does your child use? And we asked a parallel question in February 2020 as well, using our Beano Brain Omnibus, directly to kids rather than to parents. Which of these do you have your own account or profile for. And as you can see, some of the data is similar in the likes of Snapchat and Facebook. But where there's some notable differences between our data and Ofcom's from WhatsApp and TikTok. Now we know that from all the work that we do is that WhatsApp and TikTok are absolutely fundamental kind of messaging and social media platforms for kids. What the data really shows up is that the way we kind of capture insight on using the Omnibus directly to kids with no kind of parental bias means that we get a really, really accurate response rather than a kind of parent filtered response or kind of kids answering, thinking, you know, with a parent over their shoulder. And actually, we've actually shared this with Ofcom, and they acknowledge that the data that we have here is kind of very, very sharp, and we're looking to work together to help complement the work that they do, because they aren't as timely as us, and we're kind of really, really of the moment. So that's the Omnibus. The other key part of our toolbox are the TRENDSPOTTERS, and they are an amazing, really diverse group of kids and teenagers across the UK, comprising of different SEGs, different household setups, as well as age and gender. And we speak to them, engage with them week in, week out. And the insight from their experiences, their observations, and all their opinions is massively valued across the business. Whether that's the marketing team, the content team, even the finance team kind of know what's going on in our TRENDSPOTTERS lives, what they've been doing whilst they've not been at school, what's their favorite thing on TikTok at the moment. It really, really pervades through the whole business. And with our TRENDSPOTTERS, we've seen many of them go through really kind of key milestones in their lives, the transition from primary to secondary school, taking SATs, kind of starting and kind of going through puberty. And we've established a relationship with them that gives us such an incredibly insightful view into their world. And there's, you know, I can talk about the numbers and how many there are and how diverse they are, etc. But once you dig behind the numbers, I think this hopefully gives a real sense of the kind of richness of the insight we get from our TRENDSPOTTERS. So you can see the kind of real world view here of them and their lives. Whether it's Josh there on the left hand side and his kind of game time to revise and kind of jostling for kind of screen time with mum and how that works. Whether it's Freddie kind of being very, very candid about how hard it can be to kind of have friends and to make friends, or Daisy on the right hand side there, and just kind of myth busting kind of gender stereotypes about sport. It's really, really rich, and they're kind of very incredible kind of resource and essentially partners for us at Beano to kind of help understand exactly what's going on in kids' lives. One of the major benefits of our TRENDSPOTTERS is to be able to keep ahead and track of trends. Each month we update our map of hotness that you can see here that captures what is really hot right now, what's new, what's still warm, and also what's cool and kind of what's not hot so much anymore. And again, this takes pride of place in the business. It's in the reception at Beano Studios up in Fleet Street. It's in our meeting rooms, and it's presented across the business. So all parts of the business are up to date with what's big right now with our audience. So just kind of picking out a few ones here to kind of to show kind of how sensitive it is and how of the moment again it is. I'm sure everyone's familiar with Colonel Tom there in the kind of top right, just in general. But at the moment with kids, he is a real hero in their eyes as well. And even though he's 100, and they absolutely relate to him, they think what he's done is absolutely incredible, and he is kind of top of mind for them right now. Imagine not so many of you may be familiar with the Norris Nuts on the kind of bottom left here. They're a group of Australian kind of family of kids who do kind of different challenges, do pranks, kind of really, really high octane, high energy, massively popular with our kind of core audience of 7 to 12-year-olds. And then finally, Charlie D'Amelio. She's a 16-year-old who's on TikTok. She's got 60 million TikTok followers, and she kind of really kind of exploded onto the scene from being a dancer and helped popularize the Renegade dance, which is kind of massive dance on TikTok at the moment. And also, interestingly, she's kind of working with UNICEF now to kind of raise the issue of online bullying, kind of online responsibility too. So someone that the kids today really, really look up to. And this is just incredibly fluid. It changes over time. You have some evergreen brands on there, like the Harry Potters of the world and like kind of Avengers and Ant and Dec. They're there. But most of the time they really change and change over time. It's important for us to kind of keep track of. And the latest thing we've kind of added to our toolbox is kind of brand tracking. And it enables us to ask short link questions to the same child, the same teenager, particularly useful for kind of brand or campaign tracking and measuring trends. So kind of checking awareness, checking kind of usage of a brand or where they've heard of it, and also the kind of appeal of the particular brand too. So why is trends so important to us? So predicting trends is crucial to both our and our kind of external businesses. So, for example, we spotted Fortnite way ahead of it becoming big in the mainstream media, and that came about from early conversations with TRENDSPOTTERS back in 2017. We started to pick it up. We put some questions on our Omnibus to kind of check the size of Fortnite and kind of quantify it, and we saw that actually it was going to be a craze. And from early in 2018, we started to produce on-trend Fortnite content, and we were well ahead of the curve. By the time that it really kind of picked up over that spring with influencers, and then also during the Football World Cup that year with all the players doing Fortnite celebrations, we were in the kind of top 5 search results for Fortnite on Google across the world. So when kids were typing in Fortnite, all the Fortnite content that was on Beano.com was kind of coming up and coming to the fore. And it's just a kind of a good example of how being ahead of the curve, ahead of the trend, can help us deliver actually what's kind of really relevant to kids and appealing to kids right now, actually even ahead of the time. And just one other kind of recent example, which we've kind of seen during lockdown, is the kind of random island name generator, which is on Beano.com and still is up there at the moment. Now this relates to kind of huge game launch, Animal Crossing: New Horizons, which is on the Nintendo Switch, and we knew from all our internal insights that this was going to be a really big game, and we fed this into our content team internally. They created a complementary random island name generator, put it on our website, have a kind of whole dedicated section to it, and for both the whole of April and May, it's been our most visited page on the site, with over kind of 250,000 views monthly. I think a really good example of the innovation kind of insight cycle that we kind of used to in how we use insight internally in the business. And we believe that we have really incredible insight tools and then the cumulative knowledge from all the insight that we have and that we kind of deliver for our own brands and business. And my focus in particular is to kind of help clients now just kind of see and understand kids and teens better, and to kind of develop their own offers accordingly. So you can just see a selection of the brands that we kind of work with from an external point of view at Beano Studios. So the kind of second half of my presentation is kind of focuses on the kind of time right now. The fact we're doing this conference digitally, I think speaks volumes, and actually speaking to our audience and understanding how they're adapting, understanding how they are experiencing the whole coronavirus crisis and the pandemic is even more crucial right now, given that no one, and in particular kids, have experienced a time like this at all. There's all sorts of assumptions out there, theories, speculation about how the world and consumers have and will change. And we believe that kids' voices in particular have been underrepresented. So we've been using tools such as the Omnibus, such as TRENDSPOTTERS, to get kids and teens and their families' perspective of the COVID-19 crisis. And we've been nimbly kind of actioning all this insight across the business, and also planning for the longer term too. And I'm just going to kind of show some examples of what we understand about kids' experience at the moment from all the digital tools that we have, and also how we're actually kind of making a difference with that knowledge. So firstly, from very early on, way back in March, even before the schools shut down originally in the UK, and we're already closing in the US, we've seen that boredom, rather than worry, is the overwhelming feeling that kids have had during the crisis across both markets, even kind of particularly pronounced in the US. And this has actually informed much of our messaging across the comic, across the website, and every day at 4 p.m. A new boredom buster idea is released on .com. And it's been essential to kind of inspiring us and kind of driving us on as a business to help bust that boredom in the most amount of ways possible. We already knew that this generation were more socially active than previous ones, and what coronavirus has demonstrated even further is that they are very action orientated. And back in March, right at the off, when we were kind of asking them what would make them feel better about coronavirus, their solutions were around closing schools and kind of finding a vaccine, and something very, very kind of taking some action and having some action to kind of tackle it. And what we've seen with a lack of engagement from brands is that they can kids themselves, they fuel the rainbow trend. A kind of young teenager came up with the idea for the yellow hearts and windows for those who families who've had someone who's died during the crisis, to kind of let people know that that's kind of happened to them and that they're going through that. And also kind of most recently, kind of kids and teenagers themselves have started to kind of take it upon themselves to kind of raise money, kind of inspired by Colonel Tom, but also just kind of doing it themselves. So kind of being able to do something active to kind of help them, make them feel better, is really, really important. And at Beano.com, we've created Britain's funniest family, that you can see at the bottom there. It's currently in the kind of voting stages, because actually having a laugh and being able to have something to laugh at came out as being really important for kids. And there's a kind of key action to be able to take to kind of help them get through it. And by kind of creating Britain's funniest family, we've given them another way to do this. As lockdown has gone on, Gen Alpha have evolved how they use tech to communicate and play. What's been so interesting is the kind of changes that have happened within lockdown itself. So back at the kind of beginning of lockdown, in March, actually things like FaceTime were the most common, but that's actually declined as we go into April. And what we're now seeing is that platforms which allow gaming and connection and something else are really thriving. So you take Roblox on the left-hand side there as an example, which is essentially, or what kind of was a gaming site. At the moment, that's such a key way for 7 to 10-year-olds to message each other, to communicate with each other whilst school's out. And House Party on the right-hand side there has shot onto the scene as well. Kind of pretty much unheard of at the beginning of the year, kind of a little bit of uptake in March. Now kind of a quarter of kids had used House Party recently. And then lastly, Fortnite, which is a really fascinating one, the combat game, which I already referred to, actually has now created a non-combat area, kind of party royale, where kids hang out, they watch live concerts, they try on different outfits. They're not kind of fighting and they're not combating. It's actually a physical space to kind of hang out, and it's kind of substituted the real world. And this is a kind of digital and virtual as a place where kids are thriving, and really, really reflects the kind of the evolution that's happened in coronavirus. And I think the expectations of how things will be when we move out of the crisis too. There's definitely been a change of routines and activities, with a lot of falling back on old-fashioned, kind of more traditional activities such as board games, physical arts and craft, and baking when flour is available and you've got some in stock. And it just seems some examples of activities that have kind of grown and increased during lockdown itself. At Beano ourselves, we've seen comic subscriptions grow exponentially in the last few months, as well as several more traditional categories on our e-commerce, such as kind of the Beano Monopoly, just kind of basically go through the roof in terms of year-in-year increase. So understanding what's going on in their world through all the insight that we have, and then translating it into something kind of tangible and to kind of deliver against what kind of kids and families really, really need at the moment. And then in the UK in particular, although team and competitive sport has kind of been really, really curtailed by all the restrictions and social distancing, there's been a huge surge in outdoor exercise, which I imagine a lot of you have noticed. And we've kind of seen this also from our TRENDSPOTTERS, heard about all the different things they're doing, and all the Omnibus data has kind of been showing that up. And again, what's interesting is in these changes that we've seen isn't just before and then during lockdown. Even within lockdown, we've seen massive increases. So in the UK in particular, kind of scooter bike riding, going for walks with family has gone up within lockdown itself. Interestingly, this is part of a wider picture and a wider theme in the US that's been less pronounced in the US. US kids quite sadly have been kind of more restricted in terms of the availability to go outside and going outside too. But still kind of really important to understand and to kind of see that US kids are actually spending more time indoors, a huge amount of them on Beano.com, and kind of how we can kind of deliver against that. And kind of lastly, I wanted to finish on the whole big issue of schooling and homeschooling. Like, it's still being hotly debated, even though some kids have now gone back to primary school in the UK. What we've seen from while kids have been at home is the likes of Kahoot, again, something that a lot of kids hadn't really heard of even 2 months ago, and Zoom, kind of equally too, play a really crucial role in homeschooling. And one of the things we've identified is that boys in particular are generally happier at home school rather than in school. Now this isn't because they're kind of lazy and kind of want to bust that that kind of stereotype. Actually, it's just because it fits them better. They're less structured, they're kind of more flexible form of schooling, when they can get up and run around when they need to, when they don't have to put their hand up to go to the toilet. And this the kind of they are reacting better to kind of homeschooling, having that freedom. They're still doing work as well. We've got huge amounts of data about what they've been doing. But in terms of what we've seen here, we believe there's got huge implications for the future of the education system. Again, internally, we have a Beano for Schools team, and we're exploring kind of what this might mean in terms of suitability of current education system for kids. And we're also in several conversations with education sector clients, and also kind of provide our own homeschooling Beano branded content as well for kids and families to use as homeschooling has gone on and kind of the boredom has increased. So hopefully this has given you some inspiration around how digital transformation has really catapulted Beano into the 2020s, and how much of a positive impact that insight can make across an entire business. So thank you, and hopefully we've got a bit of time for some questions.